Hey everyone, James Callender and Brylea Jeffcoat here with HRV, a workplace guide, and we're so excited to be coming back to you today talking about interviews. One of the a very hotly contested topic or subject, right? Because interviews are scary. Interviews can be very scary if you don't do them often, or even if you actually do interviews often, they can still be scary, nerve-wracking. You're trying to either A, get a job because you're unemployed, or B, get a new job for career growth, or because C, something's going on in the workplace. And there's a lot of questions that come about, like how should I get prepared for the interview, or should I prepare for the interview? What time should I get there? Or should I ask questions? Why do they do this? Why do they do that? So hopefully Brylea and I can jump in today and really go through a myriad of things that relate to interviews and give you some tips and tricks of what to expect when you're coming into interviews, how to be prepared for interviews, and then also how to ace that interview when you're having the interview, and what to do after the interview, because so many people neglect that. After the interview, we just disappear, right? Which isn't the worst, but it's not the best practice either. So one of the things that I always talk about, Bradley, and I always stress to my leaders in the organization, and you and I have talked about this many times as well, but when does the interview start?
The interview starts whenever you actually put in your application. So,
That's what I say every time.
yeah.
So take our listeners through why. Take them through the why behind why we say that, or why I say that, and I hope others can jump on that bandwagon as well.
So, whenever both James and I are both HR professionals, and so we look at so many applications and resumes throughout the day. And the first thing I personally look at whenever I check an application is relevant job history. And so, if that's not at the top of a resume or somewhere near the visible area, like my gaze glances to that first, I'm almost immediately checked out. I think it's a 10-second span of whenever you review a resume and you decide if you want to read further or not. So you have 10 seconds of view time almost to say, okay, this resume caught my attention. I'm going to keep going. Or this resume kind of doesn't catch my attention. They don't have relevant experience. I'm probably going to move on.
Yeah, and one of the things is that all of the roles that we hire for have a different level of responsibility, expectations, accountability, all these things that go into them, a lot of the soft skills, right? So I always say that the interview starts at the very first interaction you have with an organization, which is the application submission, because I start evaluating everything about that candidacy at that point. So I am now interviewing you when I look at a resume, and if this is a highly detailed role and I'm looking at the resume and I see a lot of errors on the resume, that's a concern to me, right? So those things start standing out really early, but then we fast forward to let's jump all the way to the actual interview date. So I've set an interview for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. When I schedule an interview with a candidate, I give them all of the information they need at that time. I tell them the location of the interview, the time of the interview, and whoever they'll be interviewing with, right? The candidate can ask me anything that they want to ask during that process, during that scheduling time. 99 out of 100 times, there's not a lot of questions from a candidate about, what should I wear? What should I do? None of those things come up, which is okay. That's not a problem, because maybe you've been on interviews and you know what to expect. But I get it probably 50% of the time from candidates, and it's crazy how high that percentage is. I get people that will go to the wrong place. They will go to the wrong door. They will message them, how do I get there? Well, it's the front door. I don't know what else to tell you. Come in the front door, right? But I have those yeah, yeah, right? You can map these places out. It's not crazy. But when I give you the address, the time, and the person you're meeting with, I get it all the time. They will come in, they will hit up the receptionist, and the receptionist will say, who are you here to see? I'm not sure. I'm just here for an interview. I don't know who I'm here to see, though. Right? That's a problem. I told you that you're coming to meet with Brylea tomorrow. You should know, hey, I'm here for a 9 a.m. interview with Brylea. So that entire process is an interview to see if you're following instructions. When we're in a lot of times positions where employees have key things that they have to pay attention to. They have instructions and directions and processes and procedures that you have to follow, because it's safety, right? It could be dangerous if you're not following process, especially depending on what industry you're in. But it could be dangerous in manufacturing or construction or warehouse work, things like that. If you're not following processes and practices as written and to detail, it could be dangerous. And so when I get to an interview or when I'm planning an interview, if this person can't get to the right location, they can't remember who they're supposed to be meeting with, they can't remember the time of the interview, and these things start adding up to make me think like, hey, there are some concerns here. Can this person follow directions when they get onto the job site? So those things are concerns for me from when does the interview start? And it's not just when we sit down and say, hi, I'm James, how are you? That's not the first interaction we've had. So this process is
And that just goes into being prepared for an interview. A lot of times you go into an interview and majority of applicants have no clue about the company. They don't do their research. They don't follow up on what the company actually does. They don't know what the job actually entails. I would say a good majority of applicants don't even read the full job application. They read the title, a few main bullet points, and then they decide whether or not they want to apply. That often they will apply anyways. So if you're just going through and I see that you've applied to 6 positions within our company and you actually only apply for one that's similar to your job history or your specific roles or qualifications, I'm going to say, well, they didn't really pay attention to what they were applying for anyways.
so you've touched on it. A good segue there, but preparation for the interview. What advice do you have candidate give would you give to candidates for preparing for interviews? Like how do you get prepared for interviews?
So, what I personally like to do and tell a lot of college students that I've talked to over the past few years is to do your research on the company, know when they were founded, know their key leaders, know their business practices, know their culture. If they have anything posted on their core values, learn those, see how you can con- contribute to their culture in a positive way because that's only going to make a positive impact within that interview.
Yeah, and so I think it's very important to note, in my opinion, and Bradley may have a different opinion, but the different level of the role in the organization does stipulate a lot of times the level of preparedness that you should have coming into that interview, right? So if you're applying for an entry level role in my organization, I just expect you to know about my organization, of my industry, right? You need to know the type of work we do, that type of stuff, who we are, the very basics. I don't expect you to know all the details of my organization and how it functions and how I don't. You're not expected to know that now. If you want a senior leadership role in the organization, if you're applying for a director or VP, I need you to know more. You need to be more prepared. You need to be more knowledgeable of us, what's going on, how the industry works. Also, I would say if you're applying for a niche position, so if you're applying for a position that is heavily related to marketing or sales or something like that, I would tell you right now, you need to have that knowledge of who we are from a company. You better have plenty of research about what our marketing campaigns look like, what our branding materials look like, what the type of message we're trying to deliver with our videos and our content creation, our social media pages. Those are key things that you will be doing in that role. So understanding what's going on and what that I guess approach to those tactics has been in the past, so that you can mirror and prepare your interview session along those guidelines as you go through that process. And honestly, information is at your fingertips. There's no reason 10 minutes gets you so much knowledge about our company. 10 minutes. You could do that, and we'll get to like what time to arrive to interviews. That's a pet peeve of mine as well. But we'll get to that in a minute, and I will bring that 10 minutes back into the equation for you, and really give you that opportunity to say, hey, if nothing else, 10 minutes before your interview, go find out about the company. I really suggest you do it before that. Don't wait till the last minute. But I mean, I'm giving you another out to go get information about the company. So, interview arrival time. So, I got a 9 a.m. interview, Bradley. What do you think? When would you get on site for a 9 a.m. interview. So walk me through that process. Walk me through, like, I'm going to leave my house here. I'm going to, what does that look like for you?
So, with us, a lot of our interviews are through Teams because we have so much travel. I would show up within Teams at least 5 to 10 minutes before the Teams is actually scheduled to start. So you don't even have to leave your house, but make sure your camera's working. Make sure you have good sound. There's no background noise, anything like that. That's a major, major contributor in Teams interviews. For in-person interviews, I would make sure you're leaving in enough time that you can sit and wait in the parking lot for at least 10 minutes. Brush up on your facts, brush up on your job history so that you go in and they don't have any questions. If they do have questions about software that you've used, work history, equipment you've used, then you know those off the top of your head. You just looked at them 10 minutes before you walked in the door. So you should be arriving at least 20 minutes before your interview is scheduled, but do not walk in and tell receptionist, "Oh, I'm here 20 minutes early," because that 20 minutes in
That's
a
my pet peeve.
recruiter, 20 minutes in a recruiter or a leader's day could completely throw them off schedule.
Yeah. You see my calendar often, and there's many times, especially if I'm doing virtual interviews, there's many times that I'm back to back to back. And look, I will be the first to tell you, meetings run long. I sometimes I'm 5 minutes late. It's not by design. It's not because I'm sitting around thinking, oh well, it's only 9:33. I can wait 3 more minutes and show up for that 9:30 meeting. That's never my intent. Usually something happens. A candidate has questions on a prior interview. But what one my biggest pet peeve, I think, of the whole thing is when people come in like 30 minutes to an hour earlier. It's like, hey, I'm here for a 9 a.m. interview, and I'm like, it's 8:05. What am I supposed to do? What is my team supposed to do for the next 55 minutes? I've got two meetings between now and the time that we're supposed to meet, and I can't just cancel them. So now everybody is sitting around staring at each other awkwardly. Again, it's not a problem. It's just, sometimes candidates will leave. I've had this many times. Glassdoor and Indeed um, are petri dishes for this type of negative feedback on organizations. They made me wait for an hour for my interview, and then they didn't even hire me. I didn't make you wait for an hour. We started at 9 o'clock promptly. You showed up 55 minutes early. Yes, you waited an hour because that's what time your interview was. So the flip side of that, though, is I have people that are run 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, no call, no interaction with them. And that's the other side of the pet peeve. It's like, you've got a phone with you. You can call and be like, hey, James, I'm running 5 minutes late. I'll be there. And at least I know, right? So I know those things, and I can say, hey, no problem, Bradley. See you in 5 minutes. Or I can tell you, hey, Bradley, I'm going to be really tight on time today. So we're only going to have about 40 minutes for the interview. Are you good with that? And you can say, yes, I'm fine with that. But you know what that timeline now looks like for when you get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. You have to
It's
account
similar
for
to,
travel and everything else,
yeah, yep.
traffic. So a lot of times, I mean, very, very rarely have I seen people late. They just don't show up. So if they're late, I just expect them not to be there either way. But it's often that people show up early and it just throws a kink in your entire day.
Yeah, it can. So we talked about preparation, preparing for the interview. Go through the job description, go through the company's social media profiles, LinkedIn or whatever. I guarantee you, if you search through Facebook, LinkedIn connections, so the connections of the company, and then their website, you will find some key items that you can make note of. And again, this is 5 or 10 minutes of searching. This isn't, I spent 4 hours. You can find some key bullet points that will allude to some of the challenges that organization faces or some of the challenges they try to resolve. So those are key items that you can really probably expect to have some conversation around. And they may not come out and directly ask, like, how have you ever solved this specific problem? They're going to ask other questions around those type of problems that they encounter, expecting your responses to be aligned with that. So when you do that research, that brings us to my next topic. Like, how do I know what questions are going to be asked? A lot of organizations will ask behavior-based interview questions. But we don't ask, we always ask open-ended questions. I'm not looking for, have you ever had a difficult day at work? Well, that's yes or no. And so many times people are like, yep, yeah, I've had a difficult day. Okay, well, we're not moving on. Tell me more. Tell me what that looked like. When was it? What happened? What was made it difficult? How did you overcome it? We often refer to a STAR method from an interview perspective, especially interview training. We refer to the STAR method. So that's going to be the situation, the task, the action, and the result, right? So STAR. So I want to know the situation. What was going on? What were you tasked with doing? What was the action and what was the result from that situation? So when someone says, hey, tell me about a time you had a difficult day at work, I want to know the situation. Well, one time my boss was out of office and we had some problems and nobody knew how to solve them. But I had experienced that before and I went through XYZ, jumped on it, did ABC to get it resolved, and then we got it to the customer within 30 minutes of the deadline, and the customer was happy, and we salvaged an account. Right? That is situation, task, action, and result, and I just hit all of those right there. More times than not, the interviewer isn't going to be like, "Well, tell me more about that," because you just told them everything. So they've got everything they need because you're well thought out. It's meticulous, it's disciplined, and it's a good response as to what the question is. Now, a lot of times as interviewers, we will dig into answers because you're not giving us all the information that we need to feel good about that question. I will also say, after a couple times of trying to dig in, I'm going to move on and assume that you have either never experienced that or this answer is maybe a little fabricated. Speaking of fabricated answers, we know when you're fabricating an answer, when you're lying about something, we have a really good idea. So when we start asking those probing questions, well, tell me how this happened, or well, why did so and so do that, or how did this person respond to that? That's because we have some suspicion there that you may not be telling us the full truth on this.
Hmm. And your body language is a huge indicator in interviews. So if your body is closed off, if you're crossing your arms or you're leaning away from your interviewer, there's a telltale sign that you're not completely comfortable in the conversation, which nerves are normal. But we're taught from the beginning of our recruiting careers that there are body language signs that indicate whenever someone's either not being truthful or they're not really interested in the conversation.
Absolutely. So another thing, do's and don'ts of interviews. Have you ever had someone in an interview that just did something that you just couldn't believe, like mind blowing? Have you ever had that?
Mine is normally verbiage. Like whenever I ask somebody, well, tell me about your previous job. What was that like? What did you do? Oh, it was cool. It was cool. And I was like,
Very generic.
nice. Anything
What was
else you want
cool
to add
about
to
it?
that?
They had air conditioning, I hear, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
We don't.
so it's my. I think my craziest interview story, and this falls on my don't list, was the candidate came in. Uh, you know, we'll talk about what to wear to an interview as well, but I'm not usually a stickler on that. Maybe it's the industry that I'm in. If you're in banking and you're trying to get a job in banking, yes, put on the suit, right? If you're trying to be in financial services, you're trying to be a stockbroker, yes, dress the part. But I always tell candidates, dress the part that you're trying to get, dress the role that you're trying to get. I worked in manufacturing and construction, and I would get entry level people that would come in jeans and a t-shirt, and that's okay. I'm not mad about that. I'm not. I mean, I would even have people that walked in shorts and a t-shirt and ties. And while I wasn't a fan of that because shorts were never have never been a part of my dress code policy where I've worked in the past, so I would not expect a candidate to walk in shorts for a manufacturing job because you're going to have to wear pants in the role. But anyway, I never really would hold you quite against that. Now, if I had a manager that walked into an interview, a manager candidate that walked into an interview with shorts and a t-shirt, that interview is probably over just as fast as it started, right? You're going to have a really good reason. And typically, candidates will give you a heads up, like, "Hey, I'm going to just be leaving work. I'm going to be in my work uniform." I've had that happen dozens of times, and I'm okay with that, right? I've got somebody interviewing for a manager job in my company. Normally, they put on khakis and a polo or something, but they're saying, "Hey, I'm leaving my job at 4 p.m. to come to the 5 p.m. interview." Is it going to be a problem if I'm in my uniform from work? Not a problem at all. That's okay. I get it. I'm prepared for it. I know what I'm walking into, and that is not a problem. But dress the part you're trying to get, right? Dress the way that you're trying, the position that you're looking to get. So if you're trying to get an entry level construction laborer job, then put on a decent t-shirt, not a one with holes in it and everything else, but t-shirt and jeans, and come for the interview. That's fine. You're trying to get a manager in a construction and manufacturing and industrial environment, then put on a polo, some nice khakis, and come for the interview. You don't have to do suit and tie. Suit and tie is great. If you want to do that, that's fine. We're not going to be like, oh, can't hire this person. They're too, what do you call it, bougie for the job. So that's not going to be our response. But we want to make sure that you feel comfortable with the attire that you have, but also you understand that this is a profession. This is a job as well. So anyway, my most frustrating time, the individual walks in, shorts and a t-shirt, I think he was in, and sits down, and I've kind of blown that off, whatever, it's fine. And we start chatting for not 60 seconds. Well, his phone rings. This happens, it's whatever. Most candidates, I've never had any other candidate do this, but this one, so I would say most all candidates typically, send it to voicemail or whatever, and they apologize, put it on vibrate, move it, whatever. Well, he does not. This individual is under the table texting back while I'm
Like you're
talking.
the only two people in the room.
We're the
Like
only
you're
two
not gonna
people
see
in
it.
just us, just the two of us, and he's under the table. This is his literal. He's like texting like this, and I just stopped. I'm like, do you need a minute? Is everything okay? Hey, everybody has family. You got emergencies. Things happen. I'm
Yeah.
not discrediting that. Hey, man, you need a minute? You can step out? No, I'm good. Okay. Well,
Are you
we
sure?
talk for another 30, 60 seconds. It rings again, and he pulls it back out. And I was like, are you sure you don't need to step out? Like, is everything okay? Do you have an emergency or something? He's like, nah, man, I'm fine. And it's not even another message. He just goes back to texting. We're not in this conversation for 3 minutes. I say, you know what? I don't think this is the right fit for you. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, this the interview's over. Like, we ended the interview in 3 minutes because obviously this isn't important enough for you. And I've given you 2 or 3 outs to say, hey, I'm so sorry. Can I take care of this? And that's okay. Take that advantage. The individual's like, nah, man, everything's good. No problems. You're just not that important to me. And if that's the case, I've got important things to do. You were important to me because I stopped them. I stopped all the other important things to come spend time with you. And, most of us as interviewers take that approach. Like, we've got busy days, but we will also take time out of our day because you're important too. And we want to put the value on the candidates and the interview experience. What else? What else are do's and don'ts of interviews?
Off the top of my head, it would be chewing gum or tossing around a mint in your mouth the entire time. It's just the smacking and so oftentimes whenever you're nervous, you're like, and you don't realize, yes. And so conversation doesn't really go well because you're so focused on easing your nerves and chewing your gum and moving your mint around in your mouth that you don't even really talk.
Why people do stuff like that, because it is a level of nervousness, and chewing gum or having a mint or something can tend to ease those nerves.
Hmm.
I gotta admit, like, one of my first interviews out of college, I was nervous as they get, and I feel so bad. So if any chance that the target interviewer ever sees this, I will apologize to you right now. But the interview was in Ruston. Target came on campus to do interviews, and several other employers as well. And I remember sitting in that interview with gum, and looking back, I probably smacked that gum so much during that interview. I didn't get the job. I've never worked at Target. I never got the job, but I was so nervous, and I was that person. And now looking back, and I see it from the employer perspective and the candidate angle, and I was like, oh, that is so annoying. And I've even made notes on interviews before, like smack gum the entire time, and then underlined it all caps. it's annoying. It's
Yeah.
annoying when that happens. And I've been that annoying person, so I'm not judging you. I'm
Yeah.
just giving you a heads up. Like, don't do it because
Please
it is
don't do
very
it.
annoying. Um,
Yes.
don't be late. We talked about that. We talked about punctuality and everything else earlier. We talked about doing research. And this might be an outdated practice. It's not necessary, but I usually tell people to bring a resume. You can print a resume off pretty easily. Have
Hmm.
have your resume ready to go. It doesn't have to be a $5,000 resume. Just have a resume with your work experiences that you offer to the interviewer. Usually, I have one. I'd say 99% of the time, I have a resume already printed off. If you gave us one, but there are times when I'm running late or something's happened and I haven't gotten that resume printed out yet. And it's really nice for the candidate to have that interview. We talked about being early, and one of my other pieces of the things to do for the interview, be respectful to everyone. When
Hmm.
you come into this facility or that facility or the next interview, wherever you're coming in, be respectful. Everyone in there, you don't know who you're talking with. And I can't tell you how many times the owner of my organization's been standing outside with it when a candidate would come in, right? And
Yes.
you have no idea who that is. You don't know
And
the
he's so
level that person
chatty,
is in
he
their
will
organization.
talk your ear off.
Yeah. And you don't know that. You have no
Yeah.
idea who some of these people are. Now, circling back, had you done your research, you would immediately recognize who the person is. But,
Hmm.
that happens. It happens all the time. Be respectful. I plenty of times I will go talk to the receptionist or whoever that person interacted with and be like, hey, what did you think of them? They didn't interview you, but they interacted with you. They offered you coffee. They showed you around the facility. They did this. They did that. I will go ask them, like, what did you think about that?
And also take into consideration, like, if a receptionist isn't friendly, or if you're interviewing at a place where they're just like, oh, go sit in this corner, think about, like, is this a culture I want to be a part of? Because you're interviewing us just as much as we are interviewing you. So that's a large part of culture, is if you don't feel like you're being welcomed and you don't feel like you'd be a good fit here, to think about those things, because it's important that you enjoy coming to work just as much as we want you to be a part of our organization.
Yeah, and as we close, the last piece I have is follow up. What do I do after the interview, right? So the interview's closing out, and you have questions. Most employers are going to ask, do you have any questions for us? This is a yes, absolutely yes, every time. Now, the level of complexity of those questions should vary based on the role you're applying for or you're interviewing for in the organization. But the answer is yes. And so that's where that research comes in handy. You said this during the interview. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Because I want to make sure I'm aligned with what expectations would look like if I'm doing XYZ. That's a great question for this interview. Where do you see this role in the next 2 years? Do you see a career path for this opportunity in the next 2 years? Is there some growth opportunity? What type of professional development do you guys offer for employees? Those are great questions for the wrapping up of that interview. Now, depending on who you're interviewing with, my stance has always been operations doesn't handle questions like pay and things like that. They'll tell you, yeah, we got benefits, we have 401k. They'll tell you those type of answers. But when it comes to pay, that's usually reserved for human resources. But ask the questions about benefits. Ask the questions like, do you like working here? Why do you like working here? That's a great question for the person you're interviewing. Why do you like working here? What does the culture look like? What do you see some of the biggest challenges in this role? Right? Those are great questions, and that is something that you need to be prepared for going into that. Then that's where the research comes from, getting prepared to ask those questions and hopefully get the answers that you're looking for, because that will help you understand, like, do I really want to work here? That person said, well, some days I don't like it, but most days it's fun, but a lot of days it kind of sucks. Well, is that what you were looking
Why?
for?
Why does it suck?
Right. Yeah. Tell me more. Let's elaborate here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then that's the questions at the end of the interview. But we also I often get asked, like, "Hey, should I follow up with the person that interviewed me?" And a lot of times it'd be previous
Absolutely.
colleagues and people like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
follow up. Hey, send a message. I usually recommend about 2 days after the interview, because you want to keep your name fresh, right? But if I do it 5 minutes after the interview, my name is still fresh because I just left there. But if I hit them up a couple days later, the next day, the following day, and say, "Hey, Bradley, I just want to let you know that I'm really thankful for the time that you spent. I know that you guys are busy, and I appreciate you taking the hour out speaking with me on Wednesday about XYZ role. I just want to reiterate my desire to work for this company because I believe the core values of A, B, and C really align with who I am as a person and as a professional. And I
Hmm.
also recognize that you guys have some struggles with XYZ in your organization. And I have done ABC in the past to help relieve some of those challenges. And I'd be happy to discuss more with you if you want to set up some more time to talk about that in the next few days. Anyway, let me know if you got questions. Appreciate it. Right. So wrap it up. That's
Yeah.
it. But that's really good. There's nothing wrong with sending a note. Just, hey, Bradley, thanks for chatting Wednesday. But when you put those other pieces in there, you're really standing out because I can tell you, as a recruiter and as a person that does interviews, that information gets passed along
Yeah,
all
it
the
does.
time, all the time. So yes, follow up a couple days after the interview, circle back just to get your name fresh on the memory. Um, and then if it's a couple weeks after that and you haven't heard anything, then follow up again. I've had people that would call me or email me like every other day. That's too much.
Yep.
And usually when I wrap up an interview, I tell you like, hey, I've got a handful of candidates the rest of this week and the first part of next week. Hopefully we'll understand and have better clarity on this direction by the end of next week. And so now you know that like, hey, by Friday of next week would be a good time to follow up because I just told you that indirectly. Hey, Friday is when I expect to have clarity on what next steps look like. That's a perfect time. Follow up Thursday or Friday. Say, hey, James, you mentioned that, Friday would be the time. I just wanted to know if you got any questions for me, if there's anything I can answer, and if you guys have made any decisions. Right? Very simple, short, and sweet.
Yep.
Bradley, anything else to add to it?
That's all.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Short and sweet. Well, not short and sweet, but we're 30 plus minutes into just interview tips, tricks, and techniques and things that would make your interview more successful in the future. So for Bradley Jeff Coat, I'm James Callender. Until next time, see you guys later.
Bye.